Hey guys, Tom LoBianco, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News, joined today by the great Adam Klasfeld, editor of All Rise News. We're going to have some big legal updates here on all the Trump lawfare, Supreme Court arguments, and birthright citizenship. But if you know Adam, you know he lives inside the courtrooms, especially Manhattan courtrooms. Klasfeld, let's start with Puff Daddy. I
Right.
can't believe we're talking about Puff Daddy, but AKA Diddy. Um,
Well, I have a feeling folks will be talking about him for 2 months. It's going to be a long trial. It's an 8-week trial. And it's really interesting. Just, I'll kick things off with that because I think that there are ways that the public engages with this case,
mm,
right? This is a celebrity trial. It's very salacious. It gets a lot of interest. It gets a lot of attention. But let's look at the allegations of this case.
mm,
Diddy is charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transporting for prostitution. These are very serious offenses. And so when I covered it on the first day, I wanted to get a really big picture of just what we're talking about here. What does a racketeering charge mean? And
mm.
it went right into prosecution's opening statement. They allege that he ran a criminal enterprise, and it challenges us, the public, to reimagine what we think of as wealth, power, and impunity. This isn't a case. As a matter of fact, if you one of the things that I found so striking about opening statements here, the star witness is testifying right now, Cassie Ventura.
Mm.
And one of the things that the defense admitted right off the bat is that Diddy is a domestic abuser. They said it. They couldn't
Wow.
deny it. There is the video, the infamous video. Some of the people watching now might have seen it of uh, Diddy brutally attacking her, assaulting her in a a Los Angeles hotel back in 2016, dragging her by the hair off
Wow.
screen to the. So this was well known. So what do you do with that? The defense attorney said domestic abuse isn't sex trafficking. Domestic abuse isn't racketeering. And so, what is racketeering? Well, the prosecution alleges that to keep women silenced, to keep them doing his bidding, his sexual
Mm.
favors, to keep the freak offs going, that he would do things like blackmail them. He would do things like pay off, try to bribe a
Yeah.
$100,000 bribe to a hotel security guard in at that Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles in 2016 in order to keep that from going public. And so I want folks to really kind of conceptualize what this means. That when we talk about the scale of cover up when it comes to power,
Mm.
the prosecution's case here is that there are so many people, and the jury is finding out about them right now, who over the years saw bloody hotel rooms, who saw witnessed an assault taking place, and the amount of cover up that involves. How do we conceive of what a criminal enterprise is? Is our definition of that expansive enough to accommodate a criminal enterprise of all of your coterie of lieutenants because you're a big, famous, rich cultural icon to be able to silence events like these year after year after year. And that's what the government is trying to argue and convince a jury of. The defense in this case, again, the defense in this case is
Mm.
that he is a domestic abuser, and that these were consensual relationships. The government is saying no. He held power over the women. He blackmailed them. If there was the threat to his professional reputation, he was not above bribery. If he was jealous of the women's other partners, he would threaten to firebomb them. Arson is one of the racketeering acts. So it's a much bigger case in turn.
Wow.
Take the celebrities aside, take the salacious and sexual content, take that away. I think there's a string of cases that we've seen out of federal courts in recent years, whether it's the Jeffrey Epstein case, the R. Kelly case, that go to and all sex trafficking cases.
Right.
The R. Kelly case was a racketeering case that kind of challenged the public and the jury to say, is this more than uh, isolated exploitation? And at what point does it rise to become something more entrenched and become, in a literal legal sense, a criminal organization, a criminal enterprise?
Do you think, and we talk about with the defense, their strategy of openly admitting to domestic abuse means setting that bar. Um, is there anything that surprised you in terms of whether or not the prosecution is shooting too high, aiming too high with these charges? I mean, are they going to, I guess, one, for all the non-legal eagles, including myself, what is the burden of proof on these
Right.
charges? And do you think, based on what you've seen already, do you think they'll be able to clear that bar?
Well, let's be clear here. We're not even past the first week of the trial, right?
Okay.
The On any criminal case, the the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a heavy burden that the government carries, and it doesn't matter who is sitting in that defendant's chair. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This is an 8-week trial. That's the anticipated length. But already, what are we seeing? We have heard testimony that Diddy indeed tried to firebomb or threatened to firebomb the car of one of his romantic rivals. That we did see testimony from a hotel security guard who said, yes, Sean Combs tried to bribe me. And it's chronicled in this police report, this incident report, excuse me. Um, we have seen parts of the cover up that the prosecution alleges, and
Mm.
we're on witness three. We had the
Wow.
hotel security guard. We had another one of the escorts who was hired, who also witnessed an act of abuse. But we're only on one of the women, the star witness, Cassie Ventura, and her testimony is absolutely devastating. But it, a one person, again, doesn't we're since we're early at the trial, the prosecution's allegation is that this is systemic. It's not one person. So
Mm,
I think it would be um, I don't think any legal journalist can say at any point, oh, it's already proven in this case, this is why we have a trial.
yes.
This is why, because the allegations are so serious. You bring in all of the witnesses. You wait for all of the evidence to come in. But this is the scale in which we imagine
Mm,
this kind of exploitation. And I think for folks watching, it carries a resonance beyond this case. At,
mm.
at what point does power and influence and money become a criminal enterprise to cover up misconduct?
I mean, it's really astounding. I think back to, like with Epstein, R. Kelly. uh, I feel like I should go back and rewatch both seasons of Chappelle Show, and as a predicate of everything that he. I mean, this all industry insiders knew this.
Right.
And it all turned out to be, well, I guess we're going to find out the level of it, but already there are some admissions
Yeah.
from the defense.
Right. And I would say what has come out right now is already absolutely horrifying. I mean, some
Yes.
of the bribery is chronicled in the hotel report, and it's been testified to by a government witness. The abuse right now there's cross examination going on. But the star witness Cassie Ventura, what is chronicled even in her text messages. One of the things that prosecutors have alleged is blackmail, that they'd create these videos from the freak off, and then he would threaten the women with exposing these videos if they ever acted against him. And we've seen that in text messages. So there has been devastating stuff, and again, we're in week one.
Then you're not a psychologist, psychiatrist, but I gotta wonder about this. What is going through these guys' heads when you're at that level, right? I mean, they're leaving a trail of evidence here. Did he think he's invincible or something?
Well, I mean, we can go to other cases like this. There would be, if people wanted evidence that wealth and power confer a certain degree of impunity, they would have a lot of evidence for that, right? That's
That's
been a sad fact
ridiculous.
of what we've learned over the years. And cases like this have been challenging that assumption. And
Hmm.
that's actually been a thing that has kept victims, uh, from the perpetrators, in just speaking generally, in
Yeah.
line that, oh, no one will believe you, I'm too powerful, and that you shouldn't step out of line. I think every time there's a case like this, that challenges that assumption.
I mean, it is astounding. Um, so let's get to the meat of it. I mean, I feel like we are, folks for just joining us. I'm Tom Lobianco, editor of 24 Site News, joined today by Adam Klasfeld, legal expert, lives inside the Manhattan courtrooms, incredible legal reporter. Over at All Rise News. Please do check them out. Allrisenews.com. Just started on Substack. Has been doing a lot of great work. A ton of incredible reporting, particularly around all of these legal issues. This lawfare that we have from the Trump administration. Let's move into the Supreme Court here. It- it's hard to pick one thing as the biggest item
Right.
with all of the attacks from the executive branch on the judiciary, all of the executive actions, legal or not. Um, but birthright citizenship, this one has been a real big one.
Right.
And you were following the oral arguments yesterday.
I
What's
was.
your sense of things? What came out of the oral arguments in the Supreme Court yesterday?
So I'm working on a story now that's focusing on
Mm,
one line by Justice Jackson that really encapsulated things. You heard every now and then during oral arguments, you'll hear one of the justices say something that becomes an instant watchword. All of the other justices either have to
mm,
respond to it, answer it. And Justice Jackson called, if we want to take a step back here, she mentioned a catch me if you can moment, and I'll explain what that means.
hmm,
The 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 oral arguments yesterday were ostensibly about birthright citizenship, but we aren't at the merits of birthright citizenship yet, at least not in the Supreme Court. What they were talking about yesterday is the power, which has been pretty routine, of federal judges to be able to issue nationwide injunctions blocking any illegal or unconstitutional action. So, Justice Jackson, and I've been preparing for our talking about this, Tom. I pulled up the passage here. Justice Jackson said, well, what happens if federal judges, as they have done more than 150 times so far, no longer have the power to block an illegal or unconstitutional policy of the administration? Here's what she says. I think is that your argument seems to turn our justice system, in my view at least, into a catch me if you can kind of regime from the standpoint of the executive, where everyone has to have a lawyer and file a lawsuit in order for the government to stop violating people's rights. She goes on later, and I don't see how that is remotely consistent with the rule of law. By which she means, now let's say we get to the merits eventually. The birthright citizenship is a right enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, the administration is saying, well, we have a theory as to why the 14th Amendment means something different than how it has been understood since Reconstruction. Now, they will make that argument. That argument has been losing. But if they prevail in the nationwide injunctions are no longer a permissible
wow.
thing, suddenly everyone who is harmed by that, a child who's being born in the state
Mm,
of New Jersey, who's one of the plaintiffs, um, the state of New Jersey being one of the plaintiffs, I mean, um, has to independently uh, that family needs to hire a lawyer, or they need to fashion a class action that a judge authorizes to be expansive enough. It becomes catch me if you can. And that's why that was a kind of key moment in the oral arguments, in my opinion. We're working on a story about that right now. There's also the fact that so Justice Kagan quoted that too, and you knew at that moment when Justice Jackson said the "Catch Me If You Can" line, you knew it drew blood because Trump's
Mm,
attorney and the Solicitor General of the United States, John Sauer. I say Trump's attorney not because he works for the executive branch, but because he was literally Trump's attorney. He was the man who argued the
yes.
immunity case, and so the line took out an additional resonance because "Catch Me If You Can." All the federal prosecutions. He was a man
Oh,
who stopped the
oh,
federal criminal prosecutions from going
okay.
forward. Probably one of the most key lawyers for Trump of anyone else, and he now
Wow.
argues on behalf of the United States. But Sauer, Solicitor General Sauer, said his response was, I think the "Catch Me If You Can" problem operates in the opposite direction, where we have the government racing from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to sort of clear the table in order to implement a new policy. So the administration's argument is, oh, this is all forum shopping. You can't have a judge in New York and a judge in DC making decisions that block the administration's agenda. And you know what? Presidents have had that kind of complaint before Trump. It's a sort of,
Okay.
that we've had Biden's policies blocked
Yeah.
by a judge in Texas. But here's the thing, and there's something that Justice Kagan really latched onto. She pointed out that the government keeps losing. This isn't a judge. This isn't one
Uh,
judge in New York. This isn't one judge in Washington D.C. These are judges across the country, judges who are Trump appointees, judges who are
yes.
uh, appointed by Republican and Democratic presidents, saying these actions are wildly unconstitutional. We've had four judges use the word lawless, and saying that usually what happens if there is a single judge in Texas, for example, blocking an executive order or some sort of action by the Biden administration, the administration has the chance to challenge that on appeal. That's been
Mm,
the way the system works. And if a judge gets in front of their skis, then that will go through the courts. What's being reimagined in this birthright citizenship case is, when will judges have the power to block unconstitutional or illegal actions? And you know what? It did seem from the oral arguments that even some of the conservatives were uncomfortable about the change. Now we'll see what happens. This could just be the back and forth of questioning, so I'm not going to make any
yeah.
predictions. But you did have a moment where Justice Gorsuch said uh, that Justice Kagan asked the questions better than I could. You had another moment where Justice Alito,
Mm,
point blank, asked Solicitor General Sauer, saying, what's the point of this? If the alternative is a class action, why are you even asking about this? So this may not um, be one where, I think this was a fight that the administration preferred to have over than the merits of the
yeah.
birthright citizenship question, because the 14th Amendment is the 14th Amendment. But I don't think the where the court is falling out here is all that clear.
Mm, interesting. I mean, would that if you took I mean, if they were to do this, limit or even take away this injunction power, I mean, would we have more Kilmar Abrego Garcias potentially?
Well, what would happen is it would be resolved on this point by point, this jurisdiction by jurisdiction level. That's why Justice Jackson kept using the "catch me if you can" analogy.
Mm,
That it's, are we going to the District of Maryland, kill Mar Abrego Garcia? It is an illegal action going to be countermanded depending on whether you can afford a lawyer, um,
mm,
avail yourself of your rights in the courts, or find a judge willing to certify a class action that's going to, there are still ways under this kind of new way of doing things that the Trump administration is trying to do, that there can be real pushback. But the very simple answer for a long time has always been courts have the power to determine whether an executive action is unconstitutional and illegal. And if it is, they got to stop doing it. And that's the point. That's the whole genesis of nationwide injunctions.
and
So
there,
we'll see what happens.
there's as we you know I don't know what the right terminology for this is, where you have an executive, one branch of government routinely defying the Constitution. All right. And whether they're playing footsie with it, or there will be an appeal at some point. They certainly don't. It does not look that way. Um, I don't know whether this is a rolling constitutional crisis, so to say. But one of the things which I remember being brought up a little while ago was about the lack of enforcement powers of the judiciary to enforce its own actions, seeing as how Trump has taken the entire justice apparatus and made it his personal operation, basically. And some of that is within statute, is within Constitution. All right, it is a part of the executive branch. Have there been any discussions about like having judicial enforcement?
Well, let me just, on the premise of that question, because I want folks watching to kind of make a distinction between the kind of, oh, I don't need to listen to the courts rhetoric that Trump and the administration say very publicly, this kind of public thumbing of the
Mm,
nose, and what happens in court. I'll give you an example of what happened this week. Just this week, and we reported this on one of our columns tonight in Your Rights, there's a case in Manhattan Federal Court uh, challenging the purge of climate related websites for government
mm,
websites. Now
yeah.
they won. And you know what? Some of those websites are now live because they won, because the
Oh,
government is the government
okay.
retreated from its position, and they wanted to get out of a hearing and said, uh, Your Honor, we don't need to move ahead with this hearing because we're already restoring these government websites.
Mm,
So take a look at the kind of just in response to one of the commentators, they say that this is an ongoing process, but and they will all be restored in 2 weeks, all the ones at issue in this litigation. Now, whether that happens, we'll follow up on that. But there are websites that were shut down to the ether and that are now in existence because litigation has been working, and in some
mm,
cases achieving the objective, so that there are agencies pulled from oblivion. Now, has there been some destruction with that? Absolutely. um, but are we in this kind of and I feel like a kind of sense of nihilism about it, that that there are
yeah.
no constraints on executive power, inaccurate. If you're looking
Okay.
at the way that the pushback has been happening and what the results have been, there's a great opinion that I think we spoke about last time we were chatting, out of the uh, Fourth Circuit, and it was in the Kilmar
Mm,
Abrego Garcia case by a Reagan appointee, Judge Wilkinson. And he was talking about essentially what's in it for the Trump administration to why the Trump administration should be very cautious about its attack, that its attack on the judiciary harms him,
yeah.
because the he will be seen as lawless, and that will stop his own ability to do what he wants to do. It's not out of the goodness of his heart that that Trump that attorneys from the DOJ are in some cases trying to obey the court orders. It really hurts their power, their ability
Yeah.
to enact certain parts of his agenda. If they, leave aside what's going out in the whole, the tough talk, but look at what's happening in courts. The instances where there has been real defiance, well, there's now a probable cause to find contempt. Those proceedings are ongoing. That's before Boasberg,
Mm.
and and we know because he said it in his ruling that you asked about enforcement. So to get directly
Yeah.
to your question
Yeah.
here, um, so in that contempt proceeding, um, if he finds, first he needs to find out who disobeyed his orders.
Mm.
And if he identifies those people, he sends them to the Department of Justice. Well, good luck with that. Pam Bondi is in charge of the Justice Department. So if she does not take action, he said in his order he's going to appoint, if the interests of justice require it,
Mm.
he's going to appoint private counsel to prosecute people. So yeah,
Mm.
there are mechanisms within the system, and I think that the three co-equal branches of government are finding interesting ways to deal with very very remarkable times, and to put it more bluntly, emergency times, at times of,
Yeah.
as judges have said time and time again, attacks on the rule of law.
Yeah. It reminds me, we had on a couple days ago Reed Galen and Trigby Olson, co-founders of the Lincoln Project, talking about Trigby's rules for dealing with autocrats, and we're having a discussion of the founders and that the implicit knowledge to what you said about the Fourth Circuit and DOJ, that it's not limits on power are not out of the goodness of anybody's heart. All right,
Right.
this is why this was set up this way. It was an implicit acknowledgement of frankly, the corrupting influence of unchecked power, which 250 years later, we this the birth the that's how this country was birthed. All right, the
Right.
entire
Right.
concept. All right. Um,
Right.
You've been doing some reporting. I saw you had a piece on the Foreign Service Workers Union. What a
Yeah.
big case.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's a very interesting thing because in a ruling, now, Trump issued an executive order that purported to eliminate collective bargaining rights for a good chunk of federal unions.
Hmm.
Um, it would have been, and in the ruling that restored collective bargaining rights to the Foreign Service Union, the judge put the estimate in there. Two thirds of federal employees, um, Trump by executive order tried to cut off
Hmm.
from unionizing, from collective bargaining. A judge found that illegal, likely illegal, and then blocked that part of the executive order. Now, there's still a good part of that executive order that is under courtroom challenge, but that could be a hugely significant ruling for that reason, because this involves one portion of a huge number of federal employees, who are, and what does that mean in terms of their collective bargaining rights? For foreign service workers, it means Trump's ability to, and Marco Rubio's ability, he's a
Hmm.
co-defendant in that case, to gut the State Department, massive layoffs. And how do they fight back from that, and how can there be independence? So the ability of federal workers to oppose purges, to preserve their independence,
Hmm.
is at issue in this and other cases. I saw one of your, um, I saw one of the commentators mention Judge Duggan in
Hmm.
Wisconsin. Interesting thing about her case. She very recently, before her court date, her lawyers mentioned that have argued to dismiss the case on the grounds of judicial immunity, citing Trump versus United States. So that's another thing where the thing that the key Supreme Court decision that kept Trump, as safe from federal
Yeah.
criminal prosecution, may be the factor that gives Judge Duggan immunity. And one key fact about her case, now she's accused of um, getting of essentially helping an immigrant, a defendant in her courtroom, keeping that
Yeah.
person away from immigration enforcement. Interesting thing, if you read the court papers closely, she's accused of doing that by putting him in the jury room and then into a public hallway where immigration enforcement was waiting. So that's a key fact about her case. That
Yeah.
But that is alleged to be hiding the defendant from law enforcement, putting that defendant into the hallway where immigration enforcement is waiting for him. Maybe a little bit farther away from them, but apparently they were in an elevator together. The defendant and the immigration enforcement. We'll see the allegations, but in any event, she says she's immune under Trump, the United
Mm.
States.
Wow.
Um, it's just there's a fire hose of news, and we're trying to drink it all down and trying to put it in a way that is comprehensible to folks reading us at All Rise News.
I know you had I think you had Judge Ludick on recently, and
No, no, I'd
oh, I'm
love
sorry.
to.
Oh, okay. It
If you
might be.
know his
I see.
contact, I'll reach out to him.
Happy to, man.
Yeah.
Happy
Um,
to. Maybe it's somewhere else I saw this then because I feel like every day is a civics class in the last 10
yeah,
years, and in some ways it's incredible, right? Because
yeah,
we learn a new appreciation for things which truly are revolutionary in modern society, modern human history, like the rule of law. All
right.
right, the idea that
Absolutely.
law applies, and you also, and this being a courts guy, you gotta love a judge with a dry sense of humor and
Oh, absolutely.
a quick wit with some muscle to back it up, some constitutional muscle in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. One person that we did have on the podcast yesterday, and we interviewed on Substack Live, was Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, and so
Yes.
that was a great interview. He is one of the senators who is really excellent at revealing things like the way dark money operates in our judiciary.
Mm,
The Supreme Court lacking an enforceable code of ethics. And when we talked about yesterday, you were talking about threats to rule of law. He opened an inquiry into um, the threats against judges. And so we got an update on that inquiry yesterday, the kind of lack of cooperation so far by the U.S. Marshals into his inquiry, and what that means for the rule of law. If judges are getting pizza deliveries to their homes in the names of, and this is a key chilling
mm,
detail, in the names of the murdered son of another judge, Esther Salas, the pizza doxing, they're getting pizza deliveries to their homes in the name of a judge's murdered son, communicating, we know where you live, and communicating that in the form of a
mm,
death threat. And he wants to know, where are the cases? Where are the criminal prosecutions of this conduct? Is it being coordinated, or did dozens of people suddenly get the idea to send pizzas to judges' houses with this indirect death threat? And if it is coordinated, um, where are those criminal cases? So he's pushing for that answer. We're pushing for that answer. If you want
mm.
to see the interview, it's on
Yeah,
allrisenews.com.
that's right, babe.
It's our lead story right now, and it's a 30-minute interview. We talked about a bunch of different topics.
Yeah, guys, make sure about make sure, by the way, Adam Klasfeld with me here. All right, Klasfeld is an incredible legal reporter. Just launched All Rise News, allrisenews.com. All right, here on the Substacks. Please do subscribe. And we'll be having you back here soon for another check-in on this friggin' fire hose, this legal fire hose, man. I'm
Right.
glad you're in the trenches, baby, because
Thank
this
you,
is
and likewise to you, Tom. I mean, I'm on your channel. I want to boast about your work. I want you to tell viewers a little bit about CPAC. You got a bit of a scoop there on 24 site because you that was a legal story as well. So I want to
I
since
was that's right,
yeah.
baby. I was thinking, you know what? I was like, man, I could really use some Classfeld training right now. While I was sitting in that courtroom. It's fascinating. Yeah, guys, of course, if you're watching this and you don't already, please hit that subscribe button. Head on over to 24site.news, number 24sight.news. The staff who resigned in protest over the Matt Schlapp sexual assault allegations, um, there was a retaliation measure against them by the CPAC staff, loyal to Matt Schlapp, and they went after them with what would appear to be, and certainly sounded like, based on the acquittal, uh, cooked up embezzlement charges. Okay, and one of the things I took away from that was that when you stand up, and it takes some doing, but when you stand up, the bullies crumble. It
Mm,
is really I'm looking forward to getting this court transcript because
mm,
it's one of the first times we've had all these CPAC people on the record under oath talking about everything that happened behind the scenes with this. It's incredible. It's like, and you could tell too, because David Safavian was in there, the former lawyer for CPAC. All right. And the guy who knows the law, he was the most sheepish one on the stand because he
yeah.
understands what the stakes are.
Right. It's amazing what the threat of perjury and being sworn under oath does to one's messaging. And that's why I tell people constantly, look at what people are saying outside of the courtroom, then look at what they're saying inside of the courtroom. And you talk about standing up. That's what we're all about. Half of All Rise News's mission is civic engagement. The law is just one half of what we cover, but it's one of the halves we focus on because courts are where we get this vast repositories of the public record and verified information and people being forced to tell the truth. And if they don't tell the truth, there's consequences. And if they make a claim, they need to back it up with evidence. And the information that comes out of it is actionable, and the people who are watching right now can act on it. So that's what we're all about. And that's why I am reading 24 Site News for revelations about CPAC, and that's why I'm reporting on All Rise News to get our view of the courts and civic engagement and what viewers here can do. So thank everyone who's watching right now
Yeah, guys.
for following verified information that goes to your rights and power.
That's right, baby. Okay, guys. I'll send this out a little bit later. Keep it here, 24 Site News, allrisenews.com. We got more like this. We're in the trenches. We don't sleep until this shit is over. All right. That could be a while. Glasswell, thanks, brother.
Thank you. Have a good one.
See you.